Good morning, everyone. Welcome again, and welcome to those online as we are in the second week of our series, Weak or Wise, and we're talking all about life advice as we kick off the new year. We want to make the most of this year. We want to make wise choices, and so we're in this series, and we've been looking in the book of Proverbs, and we're going to be doing that all month long. And today, you might have gotten the idea from the songs that have been sung already. We're talking about how we manage our money. When it comes to our finances, have you been making wise choices about how you handle your finances, how you manage your money? Are you making the wise choice? This week, I was watching something online. It was this new cheese grater. It's all the rage. I don't know if you've seen it. And I'm watching it. So it has, instead of like that box cheese grater where you're kind of press it in there, the cheese gets all soft and it kind of like bendy, doesn't work good. You scrape your knuckles on it, then you get some bloody cheese, and no one wants that. Instead of that, they have this new thing where it's like the grater is like inside and it's connected to a crank, and it has like a little funnel like you would on a food processor. You can press the cheese down there, you just turn that crank, and you can shred like a whole block of cheese in like seconds. And I'm watching this, and I'm like, that's really cool. I like gadgets and things like that. I'm watching, I'm like, I wonder how much that is. And then I pause and think, why am I even giving this my attention? Like, I cut dairy out of my diet like 3 years ago, but I'm watching this thing about grating cheese, and it looks amazing. It's like, for a second, I was like, I should get that. But then I was like, what am I doing? When it comes to our money, we don't always make the best decisions, and it's really easy for us to get suckered into buying things, whether that's you're watching something online or you're just going through life and you see commercials on TV or nice things as you're out shopping or whatever it might be. It's really easy to spend money. It's not always as easy to manage our money with wisdom. I remember early on in our marriage, my wife and I, we were out of college, we were married. We got married in college, so it's like a year into our marriage. We both had full-time jobs. And they really weren't paying, our starting salaries were not very much. But to us, it was like, we're loaded. We got all kinds of money because we got like regular paychecks. And then like one of the things we like to do is go out to eat. And so we're going out to eat multiple times a week. And there's this little bakery by our house. And I was getting like bagels and specialty coffee and a little coffee shop and a loaf of bread. And after like a month, we're like, all right, we need to tone it down. We need to set some boundaries here because it's really easy just to start spending that money, and we want to be able to pay back student loans and things like that. So we had to like curb it down and make some better decisions because it's really easy for us to spend our money. It's not always easy for us to manage our money. But if we make foolish choices with our finances, there's consequences to those choices. And sometimes those choices and those consequences, the ramifications last for years. So we don't want to make foolish choices, especially when it comes to our finances. We want to make wise choices in the way we manage our money. If we're willing to make wise choices with our money, it can lead to freedom to do whatever we want to do with our money. It can lead to less stress. And because if we have money problems, that stress is always on us, which can hinder our life and even our relationships. It can lead us to maybe even do something meaningful with our money. And so we're going to look today in the book of Proverbs again, and there's actually a lot of insight when it comes to our finances in the book of Proverbs. And so I just want to recap a little bit where we started. Last week we gave kind of an overview of Proverbs and kind of an intro to the series, and we were talking about wisdom in general last week. We began with this verse, Proverbs 1:7. It says, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge." Like if we want to make wise choices, it all begins with our relationship with God. And it talks about this fear of God. It's not fear like I'm scared like Halloween, but fear as an awe and reverence, saying, God, I need you. I want your insight. And it really ties into this next word, Proverbs 3:5-8. It says, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. And it says, in all your ways submit to him, and he'll make your path straight. Don't be wise in your own eyes. It said, fear the Lord. Shun evil, and this will bring health to your body, nourishment to your bones. Which is, like, when we think about this, it's saying, like, don't lean on your own understanding. Don't be wise just in your own eyes. Like, look to God. Look to his wisdom. Trust in him, because he'll make your path straight. He'll bring nourishment to our life. And so we've been talking, we kicked off this series talking about looking to God, saying, God, I need you. I want your wisdom. And one of the cool things it said in Proverbs is that we can have the knowledge of God. What a great promise that is to have this insight from him. And so we want to think about that when it comes to our finances as well. Like, how can we make wise choices with our money? How can we have the knowledge of God when it comes to managing our money? how can we make the wise choice so we don't end up with the consequences? And so in the book of Proverbs, we're going to be looking at a bunch of different verses, and there's really four main themes throughout the book of Proverbs when it comes to managing our money. And it says if we want to be wise and manage our money, we need to be content, we need to work hard and save, we need to deal with our debt, and we need to live generously. And that's the insight we see in the book of Proverbs. So we're going to look at kind of each one of those. So the first one is about being content. Being content. We want to start there. And it really carries on from last week. Here's what it says in Proverbs 19:23. It says, "The fear of the Lord leads to life. Then one can rest content, untouched by troubles." It begins with this idea of contentment. If we want to manage our money well, it's about fearing God first. Like, why would that play into our money? It's because it's really looking to him and saying, God, I want to trust in you. I'm going to find my contentment in you. I'm not going to try to find my contentment in other things and look to purchase things to make myself feel good. I'm going to see myself as you see me. And it begins with this fear of the Lord. And that leads to making sense out of life, making sense out of our money. It leads to contentment, leads to sleeping easy, leads to untouched by troubles. It says this in Proverbs 14. It says, the faithless will be fully repaid for their ways, and the good rewarded for theirs. A little bit like you reap what you sow. If you make foolish decisions with the money, you're going to suffer the consequences. If you make good decisions, wise choices with your money, you're going to reap the benefits. The simple believe anything, but the prudent give thought to their steps. That brings me back to that cheese grater, right? The simple believe everything. I'm watching this cheese grater thing, and it's like for a second, I'm like, I need that. They're telling me I need it, and I think I do. But then I paused, gave thought to my steps, and be like, I don't need that. And when it comes to our money, man, we can make a spur-of-the-moment decision. Like you're out looking at something, oh, that's really cool, we should get that. We can make this decision, and I'm going to guess that you've done that before. And when it comes to your finances, you've probably made some bad choices before. I think we've all done that. And we don't want to make those choices. We want to give thought to it. We want to be wise with how we manage our money. And it starts with contentment, not being fooled, not being simple and believing we need everything. But I think contentment brings us knowledge of what is a need versus what is a want. It helps us make those decisions. It says this in Proverbs 12:11. It says, those who work their land will have the abundance of food, but those who chase fantasies make no sense. Are you chasing fantasies? Are you looking at what you see online? You see their house on Instagram, you're like, man, I wish we could have a nice house like that. But we have to kind of start off small and work our way up. Like I wish we could have all those nice things in our house. Or maybe you see the TikTok and they're like, wear this on Monday, wear this on Tuesday. And they're going through the whole week of their outfits. And you're like, I want to have nice clothes like that. And you get suckered into like spending all this money on a whole wardrobe, trying to impress people that actually don't even care. Because we're trying to keep up with this idea, maybe if I buy these things, people will look at me like that. People will be impressed by what I wear. Maybe we buy stuff. I buy those clothes, it'll make me feel good about myself. Or like, hey, it's like we're in Michigan, right? It's snowing today. Maybe we're like, I'm a Michigan man. That means I got to have a big truck, like one of those that cost 50, 60, 70,000 plus. Not just like the regular truck. I need like the Super Duty, maybe even the 350, even though I don't have a job that requires that. And then I need to have a boat, and I need to have a snowmobile, especially on a day like this. Everyone needs a snowmobile, and you got to have the dune buggy to go up to Silver Lake, and I got to have all the hunting gear. And like, I'm a Michigan man. This is what we do. We're a man in Michigan. These are the things we need, things we do. And then you see someone, and they have like this guy, and he has this maybe 10-year-old sedan. You're like, what is he doing? And in our mind, we can think, that's weak. That's weak. You're driving that old dumpy car. That's weak. But really, it's being wise. Because maybe that person that's driving that sedan has no debt that they're covering. They have the freedom to do whatever they want. They're not falling into the stereotypes thinking I have to buy this thing or that thing. And that all comes from this idea of contentment. Not falling into the trap we see in social media of trying to live up to the expectations of everyone else. not trying to impress other people who actually don't even care about those things, if we have them or not trying to make ourselves feel good by the things we buy, but saying, God, my contentment begins with the fear of you. The fear of the Lord leads to life. See, when we find our value in him, when we realize that he loves us, and that's where our value is. When we realize that he calls us his own, that's when we find contentment. When we realize that my future is secure because of him. When we realize that God is this Jehovah Jireh, like we sang about a little bit ago, that he's my provider, he's my hope. He's the one I'm looking to for my own contentment. I don't have to have all these other things. See, it begins with this heart issue of contentment. Maybe a little tip. If you wanted to start working, like how could I actually build contentment? Here's maybe a little tip you could try to take. Learn to live on less. Learn to live on less. Maybe take a step back from your spending and say, for this month, this year, whatever it might be, we're going to not buy any fast food lunches out. We're going to brown bag it to work or school every day. Or maybe it's saying, we're going to take a step back on going out to eat. Maybe we go out to eat this many times, and we're going to go out to eat maybe once a week or once a month or whatever it might be. Maybe it's cutting back on what you're spending on clothes you're shopping for or things like that. Maybe it's just learning to live on less, to learn to be content with what we have. Maybe a little tip. I know, like for my wife and I, we had a situation this last year. We had with our car, my daughter drives, we had some car issues we had to take care of. Those are expensive. We had, right after that, our refrigerator and then our dryer both kind of died out. Had to buy new appliances. That's always fun. And then that all happened right when we had to put down like this big down payment on our summer vacation that we had planned. So we put the big down payment down, and then all of a sudden we got to fix all these other things too. And so we had like surplus funds to handle those things. But we want to build that back up. And so we went on like a spending freeze. So we're like, okay, let's live on less for a while. Let's build that back up. And taking a step back so we can learn to live on less again. So maybe a tip to build contentment. The second thing we see throughout the book of Proverbs is this idea of working hard to save. Proverbs 6 says this. It says, go to the ant, you sluggard. Consider its ways and be wise. It has no commander, no overseer, no ruler, yet it stores its provisions in the summer and gathers its food at the harvest. So here we're going to have this ant. It works hard and saves up. How long will you lie there, you sluggard? When will you get up from your sleep? A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest, and poverty will come at you like a thief, and scarcity like an armed man. Proverbs 10:4 says, lazy hands make for poverty, but diligent hands bring wealth. Proverbs 13:11 says, dishonest money dwindles away, but whoever gathers money little by little makes it grow. Just little by little, working hard. Now, I'm all for like a healthy work and life balance. Like don't just work away your life and like I know that's maybe a big topic these days. People don't want to just kind of sell their soul to work, and they want to work less. And like, we all want to work less. That's great, but we can't expect to make as much money if we're working less. That's not really fair. And so this is saying, like, don't be lazy. Like, work hard, but also work hard at saving up. Like, that takes hard work. And that goes along with where we started. Be content, learn to live on less, start to save up. Work hard at your job in order to save up little by little. And if we are willing to do that little by little, over time, that grows to be a nice sum of money. It helps, savings and stuff like that. Like Dave Ramsey would say, like, you should always have like an emergency fund. Like, save up in the bank. Don't live on your full paycheck. Save this emergency fund, because emergencies are going to happen. Just like I talked about with us. It's like the car is going to need to be fixed. The appliances are going to break down. Something's going to happen. That's a given. Something's going to happen. So work hard and save up so when those emergencies come, it's not as big of a deal. One of the things, here's maybe a little tip if you're thinking about, like, how can I learn to save money or save up? Maybe another little tip. One thing that we do that has been really beneficial for us is when our paycheck gets deposited in the bank, we have our regular savings, our regular checking, so our paycheck goes into the savings, but a portion of it goes into this other savings account we have. And so it automatically gets kind of put into that account. And so the money we live on is in our regular savings account. And so we've learned to live on less, to be content with what we have, But we also have this then other savings, which we don't really even look at that often. Then when we have an emergency, the money's there. When we want to go on vacation, the money's there. When Christmas rolls around, the money's there because we've trained ourselves to live on less, to work hard at savings. Maybe that's helpful for you. Another thing we see in the book of Proverbs is this idea of dealing with debt. Here's what it says in Proverbs 22. It says, the rich rule over the poor, and the borrower is a slave to the lender. When we are in debt, when we borrow, when we use our credit cards, when we take money out from the bank as a loan, we are indebted to that person. They rule over us in a sense. We've lost some of our freedom because they dictate where our money goes. So it's ruling over us. And maybe you have a lot of credit card debt, and you know that you feel that pressure of it kind of ruling over your life. Continues in Proverbs 22. A little later it says, do not be the one who shakes hands in the pledge and puts up for security for debts. If you lack the means to pay, your very bed will be snatched from under you. Here it says, again, it goes back to those other verses, give careful thought to your steps. Give careful thoughts to how you manage your money. And it says, if you don't have the means to pay, maybe don't get that. If I don't know if you've ever seen this. This is like an old Saturday Night Live thing. There's a Steve Martin, and he's in this video. It's like an infomercial. And they're like, here's the best financial advice you could ever have. It's a pamphlet. It's only 1 page long. And it says, don't buy things you can't afford. And that's some of the best financial advice we could get, right? If we don't have the money, then don't buy it. If you don't have the means to cover that, then don't pay for it. Now, obviously, you might have a loan for your house or your car, those are things like that. But again, you want to work that all in, so that's not causing you to go into debt in other places. And having like that emergency fund we just talked about, because if we don't have those funds saved aside, when emergency hits, we have to go into debt to cover those. So it says, if you don't have the means, don't buy it. Otherwise, it says your bed will be snatched right from you. The repo man will come for your bed, I guess. Or maybe, like we would say, maybe the rug gets pulled out from underneath you because you have all this debt on top of your life. And then the emergencies come, and there's more debt. And it says, if you don't have the means, don't do that because you end up a slave to the lender. Proverbs 14:23 says, all hard work brings a profit, but mere talk leads only to poverty. Maybe you're like, yes, I'm in debt. Yes, I need to deal with it. We can't just talk about it. If we're going to deal with it, it's going to take hard work, like it says here, hard work, and it's going to take sacrifices. If you're looking for some ways to get out of a debt, there's a couple of thoughts for you. One is we're going to have this class come up. You're going to hear more about that this morning. That might be a great thing for you to come and check out because it will talk a lot about that. And also on our website, we have some Dave Ramsey resources, and he has this debt snowball that can help you pay down all of those debts. And kind of like a snowball builds when it rolls down a hill, it can kind of build and pay off that debt sooner than what you think. And so, again, some other resources you might want to check out. The last thing we see in the book of Proverbs is this idea of living generously. It says this, there's been a lot of verses. I've kind of shared 3 in everything, but there's way more verses throughout Proverbs. I've kind of just narrowed it down to 3. I could share a bunch more with you on every topic. And of all of the 4 things we're talking about today, living generously has the most verses in Proverbs with this concept. Here's what it says. Proverbs 3, it says, honor the Lord with your wealth, with the first fruits of your crop. Then your barns will be filled with overflowing, and your vats brimmed with new wine. We talk about this many times at the journey, that God is the blesser, and he blesses us to be a blessing to other people. That he is the one who manages it, that he's the one that owns it all. He's this Jehovah Jireh that we sang about earlier. We need to look to him for our contentment, and we have to realize that he's over all things, and we're just merely the managers. He's the blesser, and he blesses us, and it's our job to be a blessing to other people. And when we do that, we even get to reap the benefits of the blessings. Look at this, Proverbs 11:25. A generous person will prosper, but whoever refreshes others will be refreshed. I don't know if you've experienced this. When you help someone else out financially, you get to see how that maybe made an impact on them. I know one of the things we love doing is sponsoring Compassion Kids or having some funds to help out people who are in need as it comes along. When you do that, it says here that you'll be refreshed yourself. And I know I've experienced that. When it says God's the blesser and he blesses us to be a blessing to others, what happened is that we get the blessing back in return as well. don't know if you've experienced that, but there's something about like you can go buy stuff for yourself. That's fun. It's great to have stuff. But when we refresh others, when we live as a blessing to other people, there's so much more meaning in that for our lives. Proverbs 22 says this, the generous will themselves be blessed, as we just talked about, for they share their food with the poor. Proverbs 14, it's a sin to despise one's neighbors, but blessed is the one who is kind to the needy. Proverbs 3, do not withhold goods from those whom it's due when you have the power to act. Do not say to your neighbor, come back tomorrow and I'll give it to you when you already have it with you. Like it's this call of God to live generously, to do something more with our money, to do something meaningful with our money. Maybe here's something to think about too, another kind of tip for us to think about. Generosity is not birth out of wealth. We think if I just have more, then I can be more generous. Generosity is, again, it's a heart issue. It comes out of this fear of the Lord. It doesn't, just because you have a lot doesn't mean you're going to be more generous. In fact, if you look at kind of the statistics, maybe wealthy people give the amount more, but their level of generosity is really not as high as what other people give. Generosity is a heart issue. It doesn't always have to be money either. It can be you see someone in need, how can you help them? How can you just maybe share some of what you have? How can you do maybe something, might be something small, but it's still living generously. Living generously isn't birth out of wealth. It's a heart issue. And maybe just think, how could I be generous where I'm at right now? And maybe think about, I need to manage my money better so I can be more generous. I don't know if you've ever had this happen where like you wanted to help someone out, but you didn't have the means to do that at the time because maybe your own debt's hanging over your head and you feel like you missed out. Like we don't want to miss out on doing something meaningful, of being refreshed ourselves, of living like a blessing. So we want to manage our money so we can be generous, to experience God as this blesser who blesses us to be a blessing. So we had these 4 themes throughout the book of Proverbs. 4 themes. Be content, work hard and save, deal with our debt, live generously. I want you to start thinking about like if you were going to take a step in the way you manage your money, if you were going to start making some maybe different choices, some wise choices, if you were going to pick one of those areas, like what would that be for this year? Like I need to take some of this wisdom from Proverbs, maybe some of these things, and I need to take a step in one of those areas. Which one would it be? And maybe you're like, I'm not sure yet. Maybe you have one right off the bat. I need to deal with this. Maybe if you're not sure, I would encourage you to do this. No one likes to do this, but if you do a budget, that'd be like one big next step I would encourage you to take, to do a budget. No one likes a budget. It's a pain in the butt to write out all the things. But what a budget does is it speaks the truth. With a budget, we put our income, which is not very many things, and then we put all of our expenses, which is a lot of things, and when we tally it up, our income needs to be more than our expenses, and it tells us where we're at with that. And when we can look at that clearly, we can decide, okay, I need to start living on less so I can be more content. What are some things over on the expense line I can cut out? Or, okay, we need to cut back on certain things so we can start saving more. What are some things we can cut out of that expense line? Or maybe it's like, I need to find a different job so I can have a bigger income to handle some of these things. The budget will show us that. Or you can look at it and say, like, we talk about living generously, but we haven't really done that. I see, and then it's maybe not even showing up in that expense side. The budget speaks truth. It helps us figure out kind of what steps we need to take. So as we're thinking about those 4 different areas, like what are the one of those topics where like, I need to take a next step in this year. I need to make wiser choices in this area in this next year. Again, we're talking about this because if we make foolish choices with our finances, the consequences can be huge. They can last for a long time. We want to make wise choices with our money. We want to manage our money with wisdom because that brings freedom. It reduces the stress in our life. It allows us to do something meaningful by living generously. But it all begins, again, with all of this, with the fear of the Lord. Well, I look to God for my contentment. But I look to God to trust in his wisdom here. So out of those 4 things, what's your next step? Is it to maybe work on your heart to be more content? learn to live on less? Do you need to start saving more money? Do you need to say, I need to maybe look at that, how we can save more, maybe making a different job? Is that your next step? Is it paying down some of those debts? Is it, I want to be more generous to be a blessing to other people? What's your next step in that? I'm going to give you a minute to actually think about that question. Like, what is your next step? What is one of those areas I need to take a step in? Take a minute and actually just think about that.
You know, when I think about that question that Matt posed for us to think about, like what is a step as we think about those four things, and kind of the bigger part of that is, as we're in the book of Proverbs, one thing I was thinking, I was just so thankful that God cares enough about the financial stuff of our lives, the money's the real issue, that he actually gives us his wisdom that we can apply to our lives. Like, he's not like, oh, go get a job and figure it out. Like, there's like wisdom about these very practical things, but it's his wisdom that he gives to us. So
for sure, I appreciate that too.
Yeah.
And like reading through all of those verses today, I'm like, well, I don't want to be weak. I definitely want to be wise with my money. And like the question that Matt asked about which is our next wise step.
Yeah.
I kind of look at all four of them. I'm like, all of them to get like right now.
Right.
But it's actually more wise to just really focus on one or two, maybe
right.
ones
It can be very overwhelming.
Exactly.
To look at all of them
Yeah.
at the same
Yeah.
time. Yeah, because when I looked at those four different ones, there's a couple of them like, and maybe you think this too, maybe you're like, you feel like I'm doing pretty well on a couple of those.
Or you're
like,
naturally good at some.
Yeah,
I
like
wanna-
Matt said that like the budget is like, that's a pain, but I kind of like that. I'm kind of a geek when it comes to that stuff. Like,
Who else is like Mark? Who likes a budget?
I'm kind of
Okay.
nerdy that way. I was a
You have
business
people.
major and all that stuff. Yeah, a few hands. Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's a couple on there that I was thinking that, like, not that I've perfected it. There's always room to grow, but things like working hard and saving and dealing with debt, like I'm not going to do this. But if I showed you like my financial stuff for the last adult years of my life, there was like work hard, like the saving has really been a big part of that, and not having much debt along the way. But the ones I thought I probably should focus in on this a little more is the being content and also living generously. And for me, those go hand in hand, because it's like, well, be content with what I have, but I want a truck. Like Matt talked about, right? And I've wanted a truck for a long time. It's kind of this thing I talk about, but I have a 15-year-old Honda Accord, and it's got a lot of miles on it, and it's just not in the budget right now. And it may be in the future, I don't know, but I have to be content with that. And because I am, or if I am, it helps me to be more generous. Because if I'm not content and I just go get more stuff, well, then I don't have as much freedom to be generous. So I feel that tension sometimes.
Oh, for sure. I feel the tension too. And you say you're more naturally bent to save, and I'm not. I'm a spender. So the be content is something that I really focus on, living on less. And another one is that we've been dealing with debt, some student loan debt. It's been our goal of ours to pay that off and a good amount of time, fast, so that we can then work hard and save. And so that is something we are really focusing on. And I am a big fan of Dave Ramsey, and he really leans into these wise verses, the wisdom of God in his teaching. So
one other thing I thought about that is, if you're married, like sometimes, like you say, one may be a saver and one's more of a spender. Like that makes it harder. So if you are married, like this is like, okay, marriage counseling here. Like you got to talk about that, because like Jen and I are sometimes, we're together, but sometimes we're very different, and So you got to figure those out if you're married.
Thank you, Dustin, for dealing with my spending habits. I get really excited. I feel like I could talk a lot about this stuff. But something that I think for me that helps with the be content, I tend to compare my life, like what Matt was saying, like on Instagram, on TikTok, like, ooh, I really want a nice house. I really want all the, what did you do the Monday, Tuesday, the clothes? That's something that I have written down a lot, and like I repeat in my head when I want to buy something is beware of the compare. Like, yes, they may have it, and that's great for them, but they might be in a lot of debt and look really good, you know?
Yeah.
So
And part of that is because we live on this planet with other people.
yes,
It's good for us to be in community. There's one side of us, like, we can learn things from other people. Like maybe others maybe they tend to be more generous. So maybe I could learn some things from those people. Mm-hmm. But it's not just learning from other people. There's the other side is the comparing part too, like you said, because and that happens so fast, doesn't it? Like you see what they have, or, they're going in this really nice vacation, and they must have a lot of money, or they get paid a lot, or maybe they just didn't eat out as much as we did and saved up for that, or maybe they're like, no, they don't have the money, and they went into debt for it.
Right.
Like we don't know that.
Right.
Or they have a vehicle or things that they own. Again, we think, gosh, they must make a lot of money, or maybe they worked overtime and they saved better, or maybe they are in huge debt. Like we don't know all those things, so for us to just kind of let that go, because it's so easy for us to compare.
So that next wise step when you're in that spiral of the beware to compare would be to go to God, right?
Yeah.
Like that is
For sure.
That's where we find the wisdom of what to do with our finances.
Yeah, I think for me, over all these principles is like, the best thing for me is if I can just get with God and read these Proverbs, but a daily dose of reading His Word and prayer, that's going to help all those decisions in life, and some of them affect my finances. It's like God will ultimately kind of be the guide there.
Yep.
And having Him and all that. So
for me personally, it's get with God and get with Dustin. That's my go-to.
good.
So yeah.
And you can tell him what not to spend money on if you want.
Yeah.
He'll love
right.
that. One other thing with this, guys, we want to do a little bit of a follow-up, and we're having a couple of these classes with the whole series. Is we're doing a class which is all about money in a week and a half, a week from this Wednesday night. It's free to attend, but is it on the screen?
Yep.
Yeah, be money wise and deal with debt. And so if you're kind of like, I want to take a step in this, it takes time, right? It takes we have to set aside to think about it and to work on it. Yep. This could be a place for you to do that. Like you can come, we're going to talk about budgets, we're going to talk about a plan. You can look in your own finances. No one's going to know what yours are, but we're going to create a space for you to deal with some of those things so you can actually, in a very practical way, start to apply these principles, these 4 things, and it might be really helpful for you to handle it. For some of you, it may be like, oh, that kind of a review. For some, it's like, well, that's new. For some, it's like, I got to refresh all that. It could apply to all of us in that way. So that's a great opportunity.
Exactly.
To do that.
If you've taken a class like this before, years ago, it is still for you, because there's, I mean, with the new year, you're kind of evaluating your life, setting goals and stuff. So there's nothing wrong with refocusing. Take the class again. If you've taken Dave Ramsey's classes, this is going to be a good class. So sign up. You got the QR code right there. Scan that.
If you're here, you can use a QR code or come to the Next Step Center. We can help you sign up for that. Or if you're watching online or you want to do this later, go to the blog or the events page on the website, and you'll see the event there. You can see where to sign up for that class.
Yeah, let's look to God for the wise choice with our finances. Let's seek Him. Get with Him.
Let's take a minute and just pray, because ultimately we want to trust God and seek His guidance in this. Jesus, thank you for these words you've given us in Proverbs, and that you really care about our the financial part of our lives, and ultimately it's yours, and so we want to steward it well. So thank you for the wisdom you've given us, and help us to have courage to not just hear a message and move on, but to dig into this a little and make some application where needed. Help us to trust you, help us to trust others. And as we said, help us not to compare, because I know we get into trouble every time we do that. Just guide us, God, and help us to honor you with our finances. In Jesus' name, amen.